Welcome, Mary Linda. I'm really excited to have you talk about your book today.
Oh, thank you, Juliet. Whew, it's been a labor of love.
I'm sure it has. So, your new book, Living Our Soul's Wisdom, will be out on June 27th. It's in pre sale right now. Tell us a little bit about this. This wasn't your first book. Tell us a little bit about your other book.
Oh, okay. Well, if I'm going to do that, I need to tell you a beginning story, and I'll do it as quickly as possible. But I think the story will kind of flow itself into your question and it can be answered. So, fast forward back 25, 30 years, I experienced since childhood very unusual experiences. It was traumatizing for me as a child because I grew up in a place that just didn't recognize this, other than maybe she's a little mentally. So that was difficult. So I just did not disclose anymore. I just lived the parallel lives, and one where the invisible just clothed me in so much love, and one where the visible was very much tense and difficult to understand for me. And then about 30 years ago, after having many out of body experiences, a near death when I was a small child, having my tonsils and adenoids removed, I left my body and I could see them trying to get me back alive.
Wow.
and and it was just seconds, but when I was only like 6 or 7. It was right after coming out of the children's orphanage. And when I shared the story, they all said, "Oh, that's just the drugs, no big deal." And that was done. And so 25 to 30 years ago, Juliet, I was really suffering a lot. It's like the shadow box was pushing.
Mhm.
And one night I heard this noise, this just real loud noise coming from my office, which was right across the hall. So I went to get up to go see what was going on, only there was no gravity. I was in this light body, and I began to float out of the room. I looked at myself in the bed, and it was like just a loving feeling, big deal. Kind of floated into my office, and this huge, dark cloud like came towards me. Again, I was just very calm, took my hand back, and just did this into the cloud, which then it dissipated out the window.
Mhm.
And I stood there, Juliet, just in awe of everything. And I knew I was going to fly out the window too. And I just took off. And as I went through that window, the transparency of the window, of the material, and the transparency of the lightness of it, I just moved right through and I began to fly. I looked at my condo, I looked at everything. I flew through the area. I could see the lights of the city. I could see everything. Now, there's much more detail that I'm not going to go into because of our timeline. But when I came back into my body, I did not want to. I had sang a love song flying. I had felt myself in the presence of something that was so beautiful and so loving. And I didn't want it to end. And I didn't want to come back. And I didn't understand it, not fully could I grasp it. At that time, under my bed was my first novel. When water runs up, there was this novel under my bed. And I began to have just these transmissions begin to flow through me. Just take the novel out, redo the novel. Had written the novel in a time when all of a sudden all these synchronicities began to happen. My friend Brian Luke Seward invited me out to Colorado for a workshop. In the workshop, in the airport, I let him know I have to meet Ken Wilber. He laughs, not sure that's going to happen. The next morning after the workshop, I said, we have to go to the Boulder bookstore. We go to the Boulder bookstore, and there in the window, come meet Ken Wilber. These synchronicities began to happen faster than I knew what to do with. I fly out to Sedona, Arizona to do a workshop with Deepak. This was years ago. And at the workshop, Deepak is telling the story how he had this Vedic astrology done on him, and that it just opened his window to understanding there is so much more to when we're born in the cosmology, and it's just bigger and greater, because he was told things there was no way anyone could know about his mother. So I'm skeptical. It's like, I don't know about, I know internally I have this, but, there again, I had those two worlds bumping up against each other. One, I wasn't sure I could trust in the authorities outside, but I knew this one I could. So I met Brent, and Brent said, well, I'm 6 months plus out. And he said, give me your information, and then, I'll look at everything and then be back in touch. 3 weeks after I returned from Sedona, he calls me. He said, we need to talk. He said, there's some powerful, powerful energies going on. And what he shared, again, a synchronicity. He said, are you writing? And I went, well, I have a manuscript. He said, you get that manuscript out. You're supposed to have that published. Work on that manuscript. And he said, your writing is going to be a part. He said, through your entire Vedic chart, there is nothing but soul realization. And he said, that's going to come through your writing. Okay, back to the original story. I took out my manuscript. I flew to Colorado. I met Ken Wilber. I began to follow my yellow brick road. Mm-hmm. Each step, I began to listen closely and follow it. Getting the book published, it said, the way I'm coming to you now, your soul's wisdom, all souls' wisdom, is each person is so unique and beautiful in their purpose now. And yours is through your writing. You must listen through your writing. I'm going to come through as poetic writing, as all this different writing. And as you do it, you will be also cleaning all those shadow boxes. You will be letting them go, letting them go. So my writing began, my poetry began, and my shadow work began. I began waking up, let's say. I began cleaning up. I began slowly showing up this beautiful, loving soul. And was it easy? No, we live in a world that just, doesn't quite understand, that the possibility that we are more than these mere just mind-body little personalities. So my journey began, and I trusted it. And because so many synchronicities began showing up, giving me validation, this is true. This is true. So I share with you, and this I love. I share with you this yesterday, I'm thinking about, doing this interview. And I said, I went in to my core being and I said, beloved, soul me, I've got to do an interview. I've written this book and I'm not good at interviews. I'm timid. I'm not so good at being out there in the public eye. But yet I know message this message you wrote through me and through this book, and I know you want it to be heard because everyone has this. And I said, I was just wondering, is there some way? Again, I know you give me signs and signs and signs, but I need a big one. I need as big a one as you can give me. And I heard this wisdom, well, give me something you want right now. And I look up, Juliet, to my hummingbird feeder. That nothing, I've just put it out. Hummingbirds have it. And I know the time of day, they're probably not. I said, a hummingbird? Within 2 seconds, a breath, he flew in. There he was.
That is beautiful. And you know what? I knew Mary Linda was timid about this because she asked in advance for the questions. And just think, we wouldn't have seen all that beauty you just shared if I gave you canned questions. So I'm really glad that you spoke from the heart.
And then the other message, and this is for everyone listening or who may listen. My story is your story because we are all these beautiful, unique, higher beings within us. We just have lived in a world that has not helped us to go there within. We live so much outside of ourselves. And so we don't go within. And so a poem came this morning, and the poem I'm going to read is short, but the message is about this. And it says, we all, as Rumi says, have that moment we need to kneel to kiss the ground. We need to kiss the ground. We need to kneel to see the hummingbird. We need to kneel to hear the wisdom of our soul. In that moment, divine presence of love kisses me back. As I kiss the ground, I am kissed back. We all are. And we know no one will ever be left behind. We have direct realization with our soul's presence guiding us in each of our unique purpose to begin service of our creative fire of this divine love within us and upon the earth. So my soul was unique to me in that I was to experience trauma very early in a children's orphanage, left alone until I heard the small voice within me. And that small voice stayed with me, that wisdom stayed with me as I grew, as I developed, as I became greater and greater in awareness and in understanding what this voice was trying to tell me. And it did, and I did too. I left many times trying to be the pretty woman and trying to get the right relationship and trying to think money and all of this, only to come back and realize that was not what it was about. And so when we live our soul's wisdom, living our soul's wisdom means we are listening to our soul's wisdom. Because without that inner guidance, and we all have it, the person will tell you, oh my gosh, for some reason I was at the stoplight and I decided to turn right instead of left. And if I had turned left, there was a huge accident. Often that's dismissed. Often these small intuitive guidance, we just dismiss them and we go on. But if we listen enough and we begin to live them enough, then we begin to create together in the world a much loving, divine presence of that love through us all in our unique ways, in what you do in your publishing business and what someone else may do in just their plumbing services. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So that's the message of living our soul's wisdom, is to first listen to our soul's wisdom, become close to that which we are, which is divine love.
Yes, yes. And how unique about you were probably a child the same time I was. They didn't call what you were experiencing, they didn't have a word for it back then. Now they call them indigo children. And you can actually learn how to develop. But I know, I think you're the same age I am. Back then, if you had those experiences, you were just awed. I mean, it was, you know what I mean? It was not looked upon or recognized that there was something else going on here. And I know many years ago, I worked with Hazel Williams Carter, who does a lot of work with indigo children. So we were like a generation too early. We had to learn this on our own. So I love the message in your book about this, from the sense of, I feel like there's something missing in today's world, these younger generations, that there's so much noise out there now. And even myself, sometimes I have to really get intentional about, okay, I need to stop this. I need to go, I meditate laying down. I need to go lay down and I need to, go within. But I feel like there's a couple generations behind us that haven't gotten that yet. They just go into that noise. They go into that validation. I think social media has done this hugely with getting validation from the people on social media instead of within. You're on social media. Do you see that, or is it just me being cynical?
No, it's not at all. I think it's you being aware, Juliet. I have 6 amazing grandchildren, and they all were born into the social media, the texting, TikTok, phones, all of this that begins to get wired and programmed into their little small minds very, very early. And this has become, I think the tension now on the planet is that, we as parents, as grandparents, as that are knowing this, have to be the ones to touch our grandchild's hand or our child's hand, or say, stop for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And it's leadership at home first.
Yes.
It's leadership at home first. When we can become soulful leaders to our children, our grandchildren, and these generations, because they are so lost in the mind, that's so programmed with all of this. And it's heartbreaking, really. Now, I look at to show you the difference of, maybe give you an example. I'm going to take I could take them all, but I'm going to just take one of my grandchildren right now. He's 18 and he graduates from high school this year. And from the time he was a little boy, I did this with all of them, I introduced him to the natural world. Mm-hmm. I introduced him to the natural world before he became introduced to the artificial world, so to speak. And I taught him to hug the trees. He would get a little snake and he would hold it, or a little butterfly, and And so I began to teach him what was just very natural within him to be a part of this. Fast forward today, he decided he didn't even want a driver's license at 16. He said, I don't need to drive. My friends drive. I'm okay. He was so different in every way. He could have been the greatest athlete ever. He chose not to go in that direction. You know, he is in process now of his soul guidance. And he says to me, he would email me and he'd say, Mimi, I need you to send me a poem. I need you to send me something. I'm really struggling right now. So can you help me with this? Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think, Juliet, this is what becomes important is our education system, which begins at home. And then, because today it's so hard for kids. If someone is not just straight, if they know in their heart maybe they lean towards the same gender or maybe a transgender, these kids are just, I mean, they have no support, none. It's heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking. And so the tension is on the planet right now, and it begins with those of us who are willing to reach out to our children, our grandchildren, to others, and to say, just like Juliet just said, I need to stop. I need to go put my head on the pillow. I need to go within myself. I need to connect and listen to something bigger and greater.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's who I am. Maybe trying to help my small mind that's gone astray. Because the alone mind right now, in all these young people, and in any of us, if the mind is the ruling authority without its soul presence of wisdom to guide it, we're in big trouble. Mm-hmm. We are in big trouble. So that would be my answer, a long one, I know, to that question.
Yeah, it is. But I think that's what's sort of missing is, once you get to that point where you accept yourself, you don't need that outside validation. You just do what you're going to do. And I think that went back to what you said about, I chase the money, I chase the boy, the perfect guy, I think once you let go of that as part of the journey, then life becomes simple. You don't get involved in other people's drama. You don't it just is what it is. And you're going to be who you are. And, I'm free to be who I am. So, that's really good lesson from the book. So coming out on the 27th of June, Mary Linda Landauer, Landauer, and I'm spelling that because it's really easy to go on Amazon and not spell it right. And the book is Living Our Soul's Wisdom. So thank you for being on today and sharing about your book.
Thank you, Juliet, for having me. It's been a pleasure.